Capitale, tanto Thank you so much to the lovely Mlu. Can we give him a hand, please, for entertaining us this morning and finding all that energy to actually do that. Mlu, you're amazing. Are you going to entertain us throughout the day? I'm hoping. Because I'd like to have my lovely lunch to the tunes of Mlu. That'll be lovely. Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Yuveka Rangappa. I'm your host for this morning, taking you through the first part of this program. We are waiting for a few more people to arrive. I think we all appreciate, traffic is what it is. If I could please ask those of you who are sitting on the outer edges to maybe just find a space that we can all sort of concentrate ourselves towards the middle, so when the others do arrive, that they can just slot into those spaces on the outside. So sorry to make you move cups and equipment and laptops and all of that, but could you please just move to the tables at the center of the room? I'll give you a few minutes to do that. Are we more or less settled? Those of you who are at the back as well, if I can please ask you to just come forward a couple of tables as well. We don't want anyone feeling lonely this morning. So please, if you can just head on over to more towards the front of this room. Okay, thank you so much, and thanks for being so accommodating as well. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Those of you who are present and those of you who are actually joining us online, thank you for taking the time as well. Let me introduce myself again. I'm Yuveka Rangappa. I know you were expecting that person, or the person who was on the screen just now, but you got this today. Okay, it's Tuesday. It's the middle of the week. There were no makeup artists and hair artists around to make me look like Cinderella. So this is what you get. Okay. Well, I'm glad to be a part of this event. Thank you to Rest and the team at Indalo for including me and thinking of me. And I really, really am honored, and I feel really privileged to be a part of something so important. I'm really glad that I made it here in one piece. I have never traveled in traffic, especially to Pretoria. I actually don't know what's scarier, climate change or Joburg traffic. I don't know, guys. We'll have to take a poll on that one. But really, we all here, thank you for braving traffic as well, and I'm sure that the rest of our delegates and our guests will get here. It must be a matter of traffic, but we will continue with the program because you all have lives to get on with as well. Before I continue, can I please call on Morgan Mahlangu? He is the safety officer of the venue, and he just needs to lay out a few rules for us, Morgan.
Good morning. Welcome to the CSIR International Convention Center. My name is Morgan Mahlangu. Please do not change seat for the duration of the meeting. Practice physical distancing. Please keep a distance of 1 meter from each other. Mask and sanitizer. Remember to wear your mask all times. Sanitizing stations located in the foyer and all around the building. In the unlikely event of an emergency, an alarm will sound throughout the building. Trained responders will give instructions on evacuation. Stay calm, Take only belongings that you can carry. Emergency procedure. Walk in an orderly manner. Do not run. Responders will lead us to an emergency exit, then to the assembly point. Please observe 1 meter from each other. Wi-Fi information. Free wireless internet access is available throughout the building. Select free CSIR ICC on your device, and no password is required. I thank you. Enjoy your time at the CSI Convention Center. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Morgan. All right, so those are the rules, and I think we need to try as best we can to follow them, because I think Morgan does have a lot of muscle under that shirt there, hey? I think he's been working out, so he'll tackle us if we don't. All right, so I think let's just get the elephant out of the room. Let's talk about that important thing that happened. And I believe that Will Smith has apologized to Chris Rock, in case you were wondering. He has said he's sorry on Instagram. I know it's been bothering you all. You didn't sleep all night. So he did apologize on Instagram, specifically to Chris Rock. And I know we can talk about it during lunch, okay? In addition to the other important things we have to talk about today. So we can all rest easy. So, like I was saying, I am so thrilled to be a part of this, because when I looked at this topic, my head started to spin and I felt a bit faint. And I was like, Yuveka, do Rest and Natanya and the team know that you only have a diploma in journalism and not a PhD? Do you actually understand what this means? And then I started to chat to the team and, just trying to gauge about the topic. And I said, let's think about this as just an ordinary person. Just settle down, calm down, and think about it as a mum and potentially a grandmom. And think about what this actually means for you and your neighbor and your sister and your parents, and most importantly, your children and your grandchildren. And then I said, it has to be about how do we get every man, woman, and child on the ground to actually understand why this topic today is so important, why Indalo's work and the donors' work is so important, because it is all about change, isn't it? Because we need to find people who can think out of the box, because our world is in trouble, our planet is in trouble. And we need a special bunch of people to come up with wonderful ideas so that someday my children and my grandchildren can have their picnics at the beach like we used to. They can go hiking like we do now, well, now that we can. They can just live freely and breathe freely, and they'll have food on the table and be able to have those lovely Sunday lunches and have things to eat during those lovely Sunday lunches. I want to leave that kind of world for my children and my grandchildren, and I must admit, we all get so busy with our lives that we don't give this a lot of thought. We get busy with paying the bills, we get busy with going from A to B, we get busy surviving traffic. We don't actually think about what this planet, what Earth is going to look like in the next couple of decades for those that matter so much to us, to our precious, precious children, grandchildren, and those that we leave it to. And we actually need that smart group of people to come up with those ideas. And I'm so pleased because I know that all of you here belong to that smart group of people. All of you who are joining us online belong to that smart group of people. But then we also need those who are going to believe in your ideas. We need those who are going to believe in your vision, and those who are willing to put some money and invest into that so that all of this can be possible. So those trees of green will be real for those who live long after we have left this earth. So for me, this is more than just about being here and being somebody to tie it all together and ask the questions and do, just make it neat and seamless. For me, this really, really struck me as I was driving here today, that this actually is something that we need. We need the message to get to ordinary people out there. It's fine to have all these wonderful brains and all this talent and people with ideas, but we need people who are out where they don't even get Wi-Fi, where there isn't even a signal, to actually understand what we all need to start doing. And so I'm so glad, once again, for actually being a part of this, and I'm so glad that we all can meet each other and talk about this a little bit later on. But first, let's have a little bit of fun. Let's get you involved in just a little bit of, finding out who you are, where you're at this morning, how you're feeling. So I learned something new. It's called a Mentimeter, or I learned about something new. It's called a Mentimeter. So here's what you have to do. Now you've got the Wi-Fi details that Morgan gave you. Can you please go to Google That's what you need to do. You need to search menti.com. I'll give you a couple of seconds. That's menti.com. And when you get to menti.com, if you need me to pause, just let me know. Then you just click on the first option that pops up there for you. And then this is the code you need to enter once you are in there. It is 266 78042. Let me say that again. 266 78042. Does everybody have it? Can I have a show of hands if you are in? Then I know that I might have to wait. Can you just put your hand up if you are in? The rest of you are not. If you are not able to get on there, then I think you are able to join the chat, and that's where you can answer these questions. So I'll just give you a couple more seconds to figure out where you're going to be participating in our poll here this morning, whether it's going to be on the Mentimeter, whether it's going to be on menti.com, or whether you are going to be doing it via the chat. If you need a hand, can you please just put your hand up, and we'll get somebody to help you if needs be. Anybody need help with that? We have some takers on that side. If someone can please assist at the back there. Is anyone able to assist? Thank you. We'll just give you some time there. All right, and the questions are here. So if you're not able to get in, the questions are here, and you can maybe just participate in the chat. All right, can we go ahead? All right, the first question. Which image describes how you are feeling this morning? And I hope it's fabulous. I hope you're feeling fabulous. So if you can answer that for us, please.
The first slide is where you're connecting.
Oh. I'm just looking at what I have on the screen here, how you're feeling. Is that the one you're answering, West? Where are you connecting them? Okay, there we go. Apologies for that. We seem to have got our slides in the right order now. Where are you connecting from? Where are you connecting from? Wow, okay. Dubai. From Dubai to Leidenburg, to Hoedspruit, McGregor. That's amazing, guys, that we have people from like very different parts who are listening to us and watching us today. Excellent. Joe Burgers, who didn't want to take the trip to Pretoria, we'll find out who you are. Yes. And then we have a lot of you who are here. CSIR Online, CSIR ICC. Fantastic. All right, can we move on to the next question? All right, the next one. Which image describes how you are feeling this morning? And like I said, I'm hoping that you are feeling fabulous. How are you feeling this morning? Okay, I'm going to have to put these on. You know you're getting old, right? When you have to carry these with you. Wow. Apparently it makes me look very clever. All right. So I'm going to have to turn around. I'm sorry because I can't actually make it out here. And it's a bit blurry on my side there. So, which image describes how you are feeling, everybody? Can we see some answers? Can we see some answers? You're not feeling anything? There's no one feeling anything. Are you hungry? Maybe you're hungry. Did everyone have breakfast? Okay, let's refresh that. Can someone refresh it for us, please? Let's just have a look and see. We have some answers coming through there. Gosh, I look like my mother, now that I see that. Are we refreshing that page, guys? There's no picture. Okay. Should we come back to the Mentimeter in just a little bit, guys? Let's just move on. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the rest of it. So let's get started. And I think the best way to get started is with the boss of this entire operation. Please put your hands together for Rest Kanju. He's the Director and Head of Operations of Indalo Inclusive South Africa. He's the founder, like I said, he's the big boss of Indalo Inclusive South Africa, currently serving as its Executive Director and Head of Operations. Rest, please come up.
these things of introductions are super weird. Thank you very much. Now I need to figure out how this works. Thank you so much. Wow, this room is so quiet, yet so full. Did we pray this morning? So somebody asked me a question, a very strange one as we were coming in. They asked me, what is my wish for today? And I thought that was quite weird. I thought for a moment, Juvenka, and I realized that my real wish is that I finish speaking without anyone coming here to punch me on stage. So I do hope that nobody does that. So yeah, thank you so much. It's quite exciting to see old new faces and old friends. I'm very, very, very excited. It's been a while. I think COVID has locked us up in this unbearable prison. I just want to give some few opening remarks, but allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to recognize a few people. The Indalo Inclusive Board, Candice Pillay and Nancy Chakabuda, I don't know if they're here. Mr. Jonathan Ramaiya, who's representing Tlo Ramaro, I know is joining us online. Dr. Geraldine Reminent, the General Representation of the Government of Flanders. Good to see you after a very long time. Mr. Nicholas Boscha, I don't know if he's here, I think he's joining us online. Mr. Puvi Pillay, the head of the Nedbank Foundation, Corporate Social Investment, he's joining us online. Thank you so much. Mr. Lance van Wyk, the chair of the Nedbank Foundation, good morning. The EU head of economic sector, Mr. Roberto Sesuti, who's also joining us online. Indalopreneurs who are here. I also want to recognize various panel members that are joining us online. I'm excited today to have Mr. Arab Hobala, who's the Global Executive Director of SEED, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Head of Intergovernmental Partnerships, Ms. Cecilia Njenga, who's joining us from Bonn in Germany, the Program Coordinator and Representative of the Presidential Climate Change Commission, Mr. Dumisani Ngumalo, who's here with us, the EU Councillor for Climate and Policy, Ms. Ariane Labat, who's also joining us online, our partners who are here, the IDC, GIZ, Climate Innovation Center, the African Center for the Green Economy, the ILO, UNEP, UNDP, SunParks, and the British High Commission in Pretoria. Colleagues and partners, ladies and gentlemen, I pray that you have a beautiful and blessed African and godly time today. First, allow me to recognize our symposium special guests also from various institutions. I guess I have to do this for protocol, otherwise these guys don't give us money. The representative from the Department of Small Business Development, the ministerial delegation, in fact, I must note, I've been asked to specifically say that by the Minister's Office. Ms. Pulane Masebe, I don't know if you're here. Maybe she's still on her way. We also have special colleagues and partners who are joining us for the first time in South Africa. Biotensidon, who have traveled from Germany specifically for this symposium, as we're exploring new relationships and partnerships with them. The Momentum Life Foundation, Ms. Tsefofatso Bokaba, who's the head of the foundation. Pick and Pay, represented by Ms. Tembi Mbengashe, I think she's joining us online. Geraldine and Nicholas and Arab, who's joining us from Greece. The baby that was born a little more than 4 years ago, Indalo Inclusive South Africa, has grown. Please clap hands for us and for yourselves. Today, I'm delighted to officially welcome Nedbank, whose partnership builds upon a very solid one that we've enjoyed with the government of Flanders for more than the age of this baby. First, with SEED, a program that we've had the privilege of hosting in South Africa, the ethos of SEED has now been institutionalized in Indalo, and SEED itself had intended to do this together with the partners that are here, DFFE, UNEP, NCPC, DTIC, DST, and they aimed that what we see today should really continue for a very long time. It is now time for the new stage of growth of this baby. The Indalo Inclusive Symposium is a flagship event that provides us, ladies and gentlemen, with an opportunity to network, dialogue, and showcase eco-inclusive entrepreneurial opportunities in South Africa. I think it's also a time in which we reflect on what is relevant for South African social and environmental landscape in the context of the global body of politics, social and environmental narratives and discourse. Today and tomorrow will be focused on unpacking and dialoguing on the symposium theme, which we've titled Mobilize Sustainable Climate Finance Instruments to Support Entrepreneurial Innovations for a Resilient, Socially Inclusive, Low Carbon and Just Economic Transition in South Africa. I'm just excited about this theme because it just confused a very well-known, celebrated TV personality in Uvenka. There are two main issues at the core of this topic as we remind ourselves of the outcomes of COP26 and as we look into what is dubbed the African COP27 that will be held in Egypt later in the year. And we have to do this in the context of and what it means for entrepreneurship in South Africa. The first issue that we need to deal with is, indeed, Uvenka, it's about simplifying the subject of climate finance and how the big debate on commitments made and the efforts of political and economic leadership on the subject mean for our entrepreneurs. The second issue is, as we collectively aim for a transition to a low carbon and green economy, how do we avoid what we may call as collateral damage that may manifest in job losses and economic opportunities provided by current and prevailing industries, as well as technologies across all sectors. For me, ladies and gentlemen, a cross-cutting theme or a cross-cutting issue is what I call the double whammy of our green agenda. What I mean by that is that on one hand, we have to face the reality that climate change is already affecting our communities. And on the other, at an accelerated pace, we have to navigate towards a change for a cleaner and greener economy while dealing with the high potential of creating losses of income and economic opportunities, and thereby subjecting our people into even worse social and economic conditions that they find themselves in today. To address this, we need serious and robust investments geared at supporting entrepreneurs in large numbers across the country, particularly among marginalized groups and sectors of society. This, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, requires collaborative efforts among corporates, government, donors, organized labor, and community leadership. Indalo Inclusive is determined to continue to be this robust institution that brings about catalytic convergence of partnerships and programs that support these entrepreneurs, the Indalopreneurs, that come from all corners of this country. I need today government, private sector, and donors, as well as intermediate organizations, I need them to understand a simple and yet poignant and potent matter, and that is, we hold in us a potential, a fuel, hopes, and aspiration of these entrepreneurs. I need to repeat this. We hold in us, as different institutions, what we may call the fuel for the potential, the hopes and aspirations of these entrepreneurs that we claim to support. These entrepreneurs, some of them you'll interact with them today and tomorrow, carry the solutions for a responsible, positive and green social economic growth and jobs for this country. All of us have a choice to make. We either have to work together aggressively and intentionally to support them, or we can find excuses that satisfy our selfish targets. The latter will make us lose an opportunity to really be meaningful in changing the socio-economic discourse and rewrite the history of this country. But ladies and gentlemen, the former helps us achieve the opposite. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, here is a key takeaway from what I've just said that I'd like you to have in your bags today. If I come to you today and say, or tomorrow, let us work together, I plead with you that we shake our sanitized hands and let's mean it and make sure that we follow up on this. And let's indeed ensure that we soon together announce something special for these entrepreneurs. And in fact, many more that are neither in this room nor on the virtual platform. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rest. And rest assured, Rest, I get it now. I get it. I do understand it. And thanks for simplifying it, because, you know, that is key to all of this. And, you know, you'll forgive me for manhandling the flowers there, Natanya. I had to feel that they were real. And the thought struck me as Rest was talking just about, you know, coming up. Make a plan for these entrepreneurs and innovators. Because I said, God forbid the day we are in a room and we can't have a bunch of fresh flowers. And we have a world without flowers, and our children will never get to see that and feel that, and their children will never get to have them in their homes. It's as simple as that. It's little things like that that we take for granted that just may not be here sooner than you think. Thank you so much, Rest, for actually bringing that home for us. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can also join me in welcoming Ms. Geraldine Remenans. She's the diplomatic representative of Flanders in Southern Africa. The delegation of Flanders represents the region of Flanders, and that's in Belgium. You learn something every day. In 7 countries in Southern Africa, with a specific focus on South Africa, Malawi, and Mozambique. And just a little tidbit that I learned this morning is that over the last couple of years, the government of Flanders has invested, get this, 53 million rand in country development to sort of, you know, address countries' challenges, poverty, inequalities, and unemployment. And I think we have the likes of Ms. Remenans and her team to thank for that. So thank you very much. As you make your way up here, let's hear from Ms. Geraldine Remenans.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Mr. Rastkanju, Director and Head of Operations at Indalo Inclusive, and obviously everyone from Indalo Inclusive. Mr. Puvandran Pillay, Executive of the Nedbank Foundation. Mr. Kluramaru, Chief Director at the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, represented by Jonathan Ramaya. Mr. Arab Hobala, Executive Director for SEET, Ms. Cecilia Njenga, Director for Intergovernmental Support and Collective Progress at the UNFCCC, Mr. Roberto Cicuti and Ms. Ariane Labat from the EU delegation, Mr. Dumisani Nxumalo, representative of the Presidential Climate Commission, all protocol observed, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I have been asked to give a message of support today from the donor perspective, and it gives me very great pleasure to do so. The Government of Flanders has been supporting the SEET initiative since 2013, both in South Africa as well as in the region. And our journey with Indalo Inclusive, and Russ has already alluded to it, started in 2017, when Indalo Inclusive was set up as a national hosting partner of SEET in order to domesticate the SEET initiative in South Africa. And I remember very well the small launch celebration that we had at your offices early 2018. Over and above the duration of our partnership, Indalo Inclusive is a highly valued partner for Flanders because their work is relevant, generates results, and has impact. Over the past 5 years, Indalo Inclusive has taken up a leading role in the thinking about and practice of inclusive and green entrepreneurship in South Africa, cooperating with government, academia, and civil society, and bringing together those stakeholders around the topics of climate change adaptation, climate smart entrepreneurship, and just transition. Indalo Inclusive's work has furthermore produced genuine synergies with the ethos of the Flanders Development Cooperation policy. And that is why, Rest, I would never think of punching you in the face when you're on a stage, but I would rather want to give you a big hug. Today's symposium is a concrete reflection of this fruitful cooperation, as it constitutes the strategic component within the framework of the Flanders-funded project, reaping the potential of entrepreneurship for a climate-smart, inclusive green economy in South Africa. This project is centered on building climate resilience of rural communities and businesses in South Africa through a market-led approach of strengthening innovative, sustainable, and climate-smart enterprises. Initially focusing on strengthening social and inclusive entrepreneurship, Flanders Development Cooperation policy has shifted towards supporting South Africa's transition to a climate-resilient society and an inclusive, adaptive green economy. This shift was underlined by the imperative for inclusive growth and green growth to go hand in hand. In this objective towards a resilient, socially inclusive, low carbon and just economic transition, eco-inclusive and climate-smart enterprises are critically important to meet global and local environmental objectives, and entrepreneurial innovations are required to cope with the effects of climate change, to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, and to drive the move towards a circular economy. Addressing climate change will require an enormous effort from all of us, from the different economic sectors, from the financial sector, from society, from regulatory bodies and governments. Without this joint effort, there simply won't be a green and just transition. Hence, offering a platform to discuss a joint way forward and engaging multiple actors to exchange ideas and good practices and put together frameworks for shaping an enabling ecosystem for green and inclusive enterprises and innovations is crucial. And this week's symposium is just such an occasion and opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, access to funding remains one of the key obstacles faced by SMMEs, including those enterprises operating within the green economy and the climate change adaptation space. This symposium provides a setting where stakeholders, policymakers, researchers, and entrepreneurs alike can work together to identify opportunities to mobilize sustainable climate finance instruments which will ensure the success, sustainability, and inclusivity of climate-smart enterprises. We must ascertain the funding needs of entrepreneurs and their communities, identify the needs and requirements of those prepared to provide the finance, and establish ways in which to channel funds to those at grassroots level in such a way as to ensure sustainability and inclusivity. The potential for sustainable climate funding is not insignificant, but leveraging private sector investments requires evidence-based quantifications such as beneficiaries reached, calculation of the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and evidence of decreased use of primary resources due to recycling, for example. Quantifiable data is essential in order for organizations to determine the value of green innovations in reaching transition targets. This is a very challenging area, but it could stimulate innovations for social inclusiveness and economic growth and mainstream sustainable practices from startups to larger companies. Indeed, larger companies are also looking at ways to transition to more sustainable production practices and a green economy, especially with ESG criteria becoming common ground for responsible investing. This will frequently require companies to embrace innovation. In this respect, their needs, objectives and activities are not so different from those of some startups and small enterprises, and this opens interesting possibilities for exchange, partnerships, and funding. The overall environmental and economic objectives could well bridge the gap between smaller and larger interventions. After all, in order to achieve a green and just transition, we will need to mainstream sustainable practices throughout the entire economy. Looking forward, Flanders would like to encourage Indalo Inclusive to reach out to South Africa's industry and to companies that are willing to invest in their green transition. It might be worth investigating if they can be more actively involved in the Indalo Inclusive symposia, but they are already doing now. And in that vein, Flanders would like to express its appreciation to Nedbank for engaging with Indalo Inclusive and supporting the realization of resilient, socially inclusive, low carbon and just economic transition. Ladies and gentlemen, mobilizing sustainable climate finance instruments to support entrepreneurial innovations for a just and green transition is a difficult and very challenging task. But challenges are also stimulating and inspirational. I therefore hope you will have fruitful, challenging, and inspirational discussions over the next 2 days. Discussions which I have no doubt have the potential to change lives, uplift vulnerable communities, build resilient economies, and hopefully contributing towards securing the future of our planet. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ms. Remenans. And again, thank you for your support as well of our country and initiatives like this and Indalo. I mean, without the likes of you, it makes this even more difficult. And just to what you said, rising to those challenges, I think South Africa, if nothing else, is a country full of people who like a challenge. They're passionate. We are passionate. And, we can do this. We can do this with more people like Resta and his team as well, and our donors as well. Let me just take this opportunity to say welcome to some of our guests who've arrived. Thank you very much. We're happy to see you, and hope you're able to easily follow the rest of this program with us. Well, like we said, what would we be without the donors, those who believe enough to put the money in the piggy bank and to make this happen and have the faith in those who are driving programs like this to actually put their money where their mouth is, I suppose. That not to be too cliched, but that's what it is. So let's hear from our donor. Let's hear from Puvi Pillay, Nedbank's executive head. Corporate social investment has created opportunities to help others in meaningful, practical ways that make a life-changing difference to people in need. That is absolutely what it is. Can we put our hands together for Mr. Puvendran Pillay from Nedbank? He's joining us online.
Thank you to Dr. Remenans and the rest for observing all the protocols. And from a Nedbank perspective, we would like to humbly request that all protocols are observed on our end. Suffice to say that we've also, it's a great pleasure for us to welcome public, private, global, and media representatives. I think it's a great level of diversity that we have, some great thinking, some great intellectual property that I think we should all be grateful in joining the one list. A shout out to the amazing Indalo team for putting the symposium together and our event moderator, Eva. I presume everyone can hear me loud and clear?
Yeah, I think we can, yes.
Cool. As luckily happens, Wi-Fi is on a big place, so I'm running on my mobile, so all is good. I'd like to start off with it's just such a thrill and an honor to work with the Indalo team. This leadership, it is passion and commitment to drive the impact that we all drive across the globe, but particularly in terms of where we are focused here in South Africa. His team are just amazingly committed, super professional with a fantastic work ethic. And it's that level of commitment and desire to walk the talk and to be able to be impactful and have the outcomes that we desire, and not just put strategic papers and plans, but also to see that through and make a meaningful impact in people's lives. For us as Nedbank, gives us a great level of comfort that we are working with a partner who knows what they're doing, how they're going to do it, and actually delivers around it. So, on behalf of Nedbank, we are thrilled to be associated with Indalo. It's also a great pleasure for me to have the opportunity on behalf of Nedbank to address everybody else like this. It marks another milestone in the journey we at Nedbank are taking alongside Indalo and its other partners to create a green economy that works and delivers on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. But for us, that is critical. It is such an important blueprint for us all globally to follow. In this context, the theme for today's hybrid symposium may be mobilize sustainable climate finance instruments to support entrepreneurial innovations for a resilient, socially inclusive, low carbon, and just economic transition in South Africa is very relevant and appropriate. When we launched the Nedbank Green Economy CSI strategy late last year, we wanted to develop an ecosystem of partners working together towards common goals, kickstarting sustainable economic growth that empowers rural and semi-urban communities. And for us as Nedbank to play a role in it, no company has the entitlement of doing this themselves or doing it with one partner. If we are to make significant impact on the lives of people that we are trying to impact, then I think, more hands, more capability, more intellectual, the kind of golden thread that weaves throughout this value chain. We aim to do this by helping more people acquire skills and relevant skills, not just skills for the sake of skills or you just, attending workshops and getting a piece of paper, but skills that are necessary, skills that are important in terms of where the trends are going. And to get jobs in the green economy and create those jobs by supporting those entrepreneurs who have the vision to expand this green economy. Our goal is to invest at least 80% of Nedbank's total annual corporate CSI spend to support the green economy strategy from our perspective. We should also not underestimate the challenge. South Africa's unemployment rate reached a new high in the third quarter of 2021. It's 34.9%. And that's just the total number. I mean, it's above 63% for those under 25 years old. We have passed the red flags. We're in a crisis zone, and we need the level of urgency required to fix this, and the energy required to fix this as if it was yesterday's problem with today's energy. And that's half a percentage point up from the previous quarter. So creating jobs has to be a priority. And jobs alone is not going to do the trick. We need to create the entrepreneurial spirit in our country and have that as a primary role to play in this regard. And that's where the Indalo program just excites everybody. Its aim is to create sustainable enterprises that create jobs in the green economy that will contribute to economic growth in the long term. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. It is therefore an ideal partner to help Nedbank reach our ambitions and targets of enterprise development, while also contributing to the nation and the world's sustainable development goals. It's a big mountain that we all have to climb. Let's not kid ourselves that, this is not a hairy, audacious goal. But in the course of the months since we began our journey, we have made great strides in various areas. And I think that's what's important to continue to build on and to reach new levels. The Indalo program started in July 21, with the first phase kicking off in September 21. The program is structured in 4 phases, namely business exposure, Indalo Veta, Indalo Grow, and Indalo Excel. The 15 selected enterprises are part of a 4-month program consisting of 2 classroom or online workshops and financial support of a 50,000 Rand grant, with a total of 750,000 Rand worth of grants awarded to date. The Indalo Veta is due to be concluded on 31 March this year. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we could not host this award ceremony to acknowledge the 15 recipients previously. But today is something special because we are here to officially acknowledge the 15 entrepreneurs who are supported to grow their businesses and reach their full potential. It's hard to overemphasize the importance of this because these entrepreneurial organizations are the agents that will make the green revolution happen. The next phase, which is Indalo Grow, will launch in January this year, has already launched, and aims to support 5 enterprises through capacity building and financial support. So it's not just enough to provide money. You also have to provide the skills, the capabilities, and capacities to ensure that these opportunities, bear fruit. The next, the program will then award 100,000 rand per enterprise, and as I said, that's due to start in March this year. The second cohort will be launched in the second half of the year, and overall the program will support 30 enterprises in the green economy in various landscapes of the country. And the 5 enterprises have also been acknowledged today during the award ceremony. And the green economy pillars are based around agriculture, water, waste, and energy. Yes, appropriate and goal-oriented financing is important. Yes, getting access to new skills is vital. Yes, finding or developing new technologies is critical. Yet it's also much hot wind unless gifted and driven individuals turn it all into action and create long-lasting businesses that make money and create jobs. And at this point, I'd just like to go off script, for a minute or so. We have, and it brings me back to the point Rebecca made right at the beginning. We have a massive challenge ahead of us, not just to drive these projects and to reach the ambitions that we need, but we have to make the language relevant and applicable to the people we speak to. The youth have always changed the world since the dawn of time, and that will continue. And they are always the group of people that transcends the world and evolves the world to something else. If we must be careful of getting caught up in our suitcase words and our long strategic planning documents and our ability to look at what the frameworks and the templates around all of this stuff. And as important as that is, if it is not making impact to people's back pockets, to their lives that they are challenged with, and it's not making impact in terms of the language that they understand, then all of these plans are going to fall flat on their face. And therefore, I think one of the biggest challenges we have, and hopefully it's going to be unearthed in the symposium in some way or form, even if you don't find answers, is how do we change our language to be more appropriate? How do we change the way in which we are talking to make people understand this is about improving their lives every day? And to make sure that that language transcends from the very highest levels when we are talking at global institutions, all the way down to somebody who is in a farm trying to make sure that their family lives a better life. And I think that is a massive gap that we have, and hopefully that is something we are going to get right. We also need to drive a massive entrepreneurial spirit, especially in third world countries, and particularly in South Africa, which has been subjected to a whole bunch of historical factors that did not allow for people to think in a way that they should embrace their opportunities and embrace their talent. We have got work to do on that respect as well. And therefore, it's important, just as much as these plans are important, it's important to us to acknowledge that we need to be more relevant. It is the entrepreneurs who see new opportunities and create companies and take advantage of them. It's entrepreneurs who create new jobs that we desperately need. Government can't do this alone. We, as President Ramaphosa recently acknowledged in his State of Nation address in February, it's private sector that we look to for job creation. But more specifically, we look to entrepreneurs to do that part for them. And that's particularly true in the green economy, where we're all working hard to support. The green economy is vital to the future of our planet and thus of humanity. It is a means whereby the high ideals contained in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the various climate change agreements move out of the theoretical realm and become the new business as usual. We give a lot of thought to how we'd like to choose the 15 entrepreneurs. They had to be active in one of their focus areas in the green economy, and I've identified water, energy, waste, and agriculture as the pillars. And because we are looking historically at developing an ecosystem in which various components are interdependent and support each other, we looked at the contribution each could make to educating the public and developing these skills, and the jobs they would create, but also taking the community with them. It's critical. But most of all, we look for that spark. Leadership is critical. If you don't have the right people, and that's why I started with acknowledging Indalopreneurs' leadership and the people inside, then the same philosophy has to follow through in terms of who we acknowledge and who we support through this process.
And that spark might be not quite the right word, because there's a quality that's not just of insight, but also of persistence that is needed. And having a bit of a thick skin, because you're going to go through tough times, and being able to overcome that. Entrepreneurship is often thought as synonymous with innovation, but while they are definitely related, they are different. Innovation is all about creating answers to questions, but it remains just a good idea until an entrepreneur brings to life by building a business around it. And then there's the hard part, staying alert to the next big opportunity and staying the course. We're also not looking for entrepreneurs who we believed had the potential to be successful. We are looking for those with a heart to look beyond the bottom line, who wanted to make money while also addressing the challenges we face.
1 2 2 2.
Who had the needs of future generations in mind. Sorry, there was some feedback. So we're looking at a model around head, heart, and hands, and can you use all three? All of us that are part of the Indalo initiative have a part to play in helping those companies to succeed by offering the skills and expertise we have. As partners, we'll be working to establish best practice in incubating entrepreneurs for the green economy, so that this initiative exerts maximum leverage in successfully addressing the massive environmental challenges we all face. And let us not ignore the massive inequalities we have in economic challenges. And we have to marry these two, because people can live better lives if we do this properly. But in the end, it's all down to the entrepreneurs. The 15 entrepreneurs have us all behind them, and we wish them every success. But they got to go and get it, and they got to make it happen. And we are sure that they will. In addition to these 15, we're excited today to be announcing another 5 enterprises that we incubate for a period of between 6 and 8 months and receive a grant of 100,000 rand each. I'd like to congratulate all of them in advance. In closing, I'd like to express Nedbank's gratitude to such amazing companies and people. And as tough as this task is, I'd like to please remind us again that we can make a substantial difference and impact in terms of what we are doing to the lives of people. And we should never forget that by taking care of our planet, taking care of sustainability, we take care of how people can live a better life. And we should always marry those things together. Thank you.
Thank you there, Mr. Puvi Pillay, Nedbank Foundation Executive, and very encouraging as well, very uplifting to hear such sentiment there as well. And I was just marveling at, how technology allows us to do these things and get on with it, even though we all can't be in the same room. And if we put half the effort, I suppose, into saving the planet and dealing with climate change as we do technology, can you imagine what we would achieve? How amazing. Thank you very much, Mr. Pillay. Well, let's move on now, and I think it's very important that we hear the messages coming through from our development partners about their commitment, about the work they do, why they do it in the context of what we are talking about today, of implementing effective climate finance and just transitions programs. And coming up with that message is Mr. Roberto Cecuti, and I hope I've said that right, Roberto Cecuti. He's Head of Trade and Economic European Union Delegation for South Africa, and he joined the delegation of the European Union to SA as head of the Trade and Economic Section in September 2019. And between January 2017 and August 2019, Roberto worked in the Trade Department of the European Commission and was responsible for the bilateral trade and investment relations between the EU and 6 countries of the Southern African Development Community. And that, of course, as we know, includes South Africa. He was specifically following issues related to the EU-SADC Economic Partnership Agreement. He was also responsible, prior to that, he was responsible in the same department for bilateral trade and investment relations with India, and served previously in the EU delegation to China as responsible for trade and investment matters with China and Mongolia, and in the EU delegation to Papua New Guinea as head of Trade, Investment and Development Corporation. So I think it's safe to say he's been around, has Roberto, and he knows exactly what all of this means and seen it firsthand. So we do have a recorded message from Roberto for you this morning.
Thank you also to Indalo Inclusive for inviting me to continue together with its members, the ASA, and also for inviting me actually to give these opening remarks. And also, above all, for organizing this kind of that the fight against climate change has in our societies and in our efforts. What Indalo Inclusive is doing in the climate finance mechanism for adaptation, but also in mapping pathways for greener and lower carbon economy is very important in everyday's work, both of government, of the private sector, and of the civil society. So, well done and continue like that. I wanted actually to say that as European Union, we are very proud to support Indalo in its journey. And when I say European Union, I'm not only saying we, European Union as institutions, but also the 27 member states that are part of the European Union in the Team Europe effort. You can see the banner behind me, and we have 27 flags, but not only the flags, but also the provincial governments. Provincial governments and regions in Europe are very much also in the lead of climate change adaptation and mitigation. And this gives me the opportunity to particularly thank one of the sponsors of today's event, which is the government of Flanders. And we have with us actually Mrs. Geraldine Redenhans from the Flanders government here in South Africa. Thank you for the work that you have just said, Geraldine, and for the work you're doing together with your government here in South Africa. But together also, I would like to thank also the other speakers that came before me, specifically Mr. Ernst Nanju, actually, from Indalo Inclusive, and also the NetBank representative, Mr. Povendran Pillay. It shows the participation of a bank shows also how the inclusive approach of Indalo is important by involving the private sector and the civil society. Let me also thank the director of the UNFCCC, Cecilia Yenga, and also the representative of the Presidential Climate Change Commission here in South Africa, Mr. Tsumisani Xumalo. I hope I pronounced the name correctly, but more importantly, I'm really grateful that you're here with us today. What I was saying is that as Europe and Team Europe, we are very proud to support South Africa and assist Indalo Inclusive in the journey towards climate adaptation and climate mitigation. We are doing it in many ways, through active policy support, engagement, and funding operations. Let me remind me, for instance, also that together with Germany, the European Union supported Indalo Inclusive Just Transition Entrepreneurship Boot Camp and the youth-led Driving Forces for Change enterprises by the Department of Fishery, Forestry and Environment. But above all, the European Union, together with its member states, has been quite active in COP26 in Glasgow a couple of months ago, because together with South Africa, we have signed an important document, which is a Just Energy Transition Partnership, pledging and committing $8.5 billion US to support South Africa in the just energy transition. As we speak, this is a partnership that has been signed by the EU, by two of its member states, France and Germany, and by the UK and US. But the EU, together with all its member states and the provincial governments, are behind in supporting this partnership in the just energy transition. As we speak, we are engaging with National Treasury, we are engaging with the task force that South Africa has created to implement this just energy transition strategy. And we are discussing with the many stakeholders involved. It is a multifaceted, multipolar challenge, and we have to overcome this challenge all together. So this is quite important to deliver on this partnership, because very soon, in some months, we will have in Egypt COP27. So the fact that the presidencies of the COP27 is held by an African country is putting a lot of emphasis and focus on the African continent. And there are many countries in the African continent that are leading on this just energy transition. Let me just remind a few of them, like Kenya, but also Morocco, and many others that are doing it. And I think there is room for exchanging these practices and discussions also with South Africa in order to overcome this challenge together. And we are there for you. I also would like to say that as Europe, we have been walking the talk because 30 regions in Europe are ongoing, actually, the transition out of the coal mining. It is a challenging transition because it requires new investments, reskilling of labor, and the safety nets in place. But bit by bit, we are overcoming this this walk because we don't have other alternatives, basically. And more importantly, the war now in Russia and Ukraine has shown also that we cannot depend on energy supply necessarily from other countries, and green energy and green transition is a fundamental pillar on which we have to invest. So the transition is a great challenge, but also a great opportunity to attract private investments when the right conditions are there. And right now in Europe, in these regions, we are busy in reskilling the workforce, for instance, in areas like green steel and the new battery. So challenges, but also opportunities. It is important also that South Africa picks up on these challenges and opportunities. And we are ready to stay with you. And it's quite commendable also that South Africa has in place a sustainable finance framework, which is sound and well articulated, and that constitutes a very good platform to work when we talk about sustainable finance in the climate change area. But talk is enough, I think. It's much better than now to leave the room to the discussions. I wish really a fruitful discussion, and thanks again to Indalo Inclusive for inviting us and for organizing this. Thank you very much.
And what a lovely and pertinent message there from Roberto, speaking many truths, I think, and especially bringing
Good morning to everybody, and thank you to the moderator.
Oh, okay. We will get there. We'll find out who that is. Somebody's very enthusiastic. We love that. So yes, that's great. But again, thank you to Roberto there, just bringing in exactly what is happening before our very eyes and how it impacts us and how we need to be prepared for anything and everything these days. So thank you very much for that message. Well, we are about to get underway with our panel, that is our discussions with our panelists. But to just open that session up for us, I believe that we have, is it Jonathan Ramaya now, who is here joining us instead of Cloramaru, I believe. So we will just let Mr. Ramaya just set the scene for us again, also as to why this day and why discussions like this are just so vital and why we need to get started yesterday.
National Climate Change Adaptation Strategy, which outlines a set of objectives, interventions, and outcomes to enable the country to give expression to its Paris Agreement commitment. Developed in consultation with a wide range of stakeholders, the strategy, with its accompanying 5-year action plan, aims to reduce the vulnerability of society, the economy, and the environment to the effects of climate change. So admittedly, the strategy reads a little bit like a black mirror to the future, but it starts off by telling us about the past and the present. It tells us that the observed rate of warming in South Africa has been 2 degrees Celsius per century in the western and northeastern parts of the country, and this is double the global average. Yet the adaptation strategy ties the past, the present, and future climates together. Due to observed increase in extreme weather events over the last century, and this has gotten more frequent in recent decades, we can expect an increase in heat wave conditions, dry spell durations lengthening, and an increase in rainfall intensity. And given its coastline, its fairly long coastline, sea level rise is another slow onset risk that could impact South Africa. Whilst drought is arguably South Africa's biggest climate risk, with water demand outstripping supply in several local municipalities in the Eastern Cape and here in Gauteng by 2050, we should not overlook other risks like flooding. Many urban settlements in this province, Gauteng, as well as in KwaZulu-Natal, have been classified as having high risk of flooding by the middle of the century. And though the highest risk of wildfires is in the western part of the country, several densely populated forestry towns, such as those in the Garden Route district, create perfect conditions for increasingly destructive wildfires, with most climate models showing a hotter and drier trend in that particular district. Still, the mirror that we look into does not need to be something we fear. Adaptation to climate change presents South Africa with an opportunity to transform both the health and the economy, to strengthen the social and spatial fabric, and to become more competitive in the global marketplace. But we need systemic changes to minimize the impacts of climate change. And technological and other forms of innovation that consider social and economic factors can assist in making these transformative changes and in building adaptive capacity to climate change. So adaptation to climate change has often been seen as something that might cost the economy, but we should not be paralyzed by that fear. Instead, we should look towards growing new economic areas, and dare I say it, we should try to benefit whilst building adaptive capacity at the same time. A simple example is a project the department has been working on in the Southern Cape through the Government of Flanders funded project, the Adaptive Capacity Facility. And here we've teamed up with Indalo on a wildfires intervention where the department will construct fire breaks at a high fire risk, low income settlement. And the settlement is sandwiched between heavy fuel load environments, and by us creating buffer zones, this will ultimately retard the spread of wildfires. The project, though, necessitates the removal of vegetation, and the biomass presents an opportunity for creating value-added products. And that's now being explored by the department. The examples where adaptation and the economy intersect, such as the creation of new markets for forecasting and early warning systems, water-efficient technologies, and innovation in food production. And we hope to hear a lot more about this in the upcoming sessions. In this next session that we will hear from various panelists, we will be listing out for global trends and practical actions we can take as a country to boost economic growth that leads to increased climate adaptive capacity. I would like to wish you all the best, and I look forward to hearing from the panelists. Thank you.
Jonathan, thank you so much. Jonathan Ramaiya, and just to give you his full title, he's a Director for Climate Change Adaptation at the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. He's responsible for Climate Adaptive Capacity Facility. So that is just, I suppose, you know, when we know people who are absolutely entrenched in this, and those are the people we need. And thank you, Jonathan, for actually making yourself available for us today. Well, it is time for us to head on over to that panel discussion to hear from our esteemed panel. And just to give you just a very quick introduction to the four who are on our panel today. First up, we have Mr. Arab Hobala. He's the Executive Director of SEED, a global partnership for action on green economy and sustainable development through green entrepreneurship. We'll hear more from Arab in just a moment. He'll tell us a little bit more about himself. And then we have Ms. Cecilia Njenga, Director for Intergovernmental Support and Collective Progress, United Nations Framework on Climate Change Convention, the UNFCCC. She's an economist, urban and regional planner with over 27 years of progressive work experience in international sustainable development, climate change and conservation. Her current role involves supporting the presidency and incoming presidency of the UNFCCC Conference of the Parties, that's COP, and facilitating the interaction between governing and subsidiary bodies and the constituted bodies under the Climate Change Convention. We also have Ms. Ariane Labat, is the Climate, Environment and Agriculture Policy Councillor at the EU delegation to the Republic of South Africa in the Trade and Economics Relation Team, taking forward policy dialogues and South Africa-EU exchanges of experiences aiming for sustainable jobs and growth. Furthermore, Ariana is a former coordinator of EU Technical Negotiating Team to the UNFCCC. And then joining us is Mr. Dumisani Ngumalo, Project Coordinator in the Presidential Climate Commission Secretariat. Dumisani is responsible for supporting the donor coordination program of the Commission, climate finance and adaptation portfolios of the Commissions. He aims to enhance the funding capacity towards the Just Adaptation Response Program in South Africa. He is a qualified United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change expert on the 2006 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Guidelines and Greenhouse Gas Inventory Compilation for the waste sector. So very, very, very knowledgeable, very, very important people on our panel. And can we just give them a round of applause for welcome? And a very big welcome to our panelists as well, all four of you. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll let Mr. Ngumalo take his seat. Are you going to feel a bit lonely there? Well, I'm glad that I'm not up here alone. I'll keep you company. Okay, I will. All right. So I think I'll start with you, Dumisani. Then we're going to give each one of you just a chance, just a couple of minutes, just to talk about your relevance and the work that you actually do in the context of what we are here to discuss today. So just a very quick getting to know you, I suppose, before we bombard you with questions. Would you like to start first, seeing as you're right here?
Yeah. Good morning, and good morning, everyone. All protocol observed. As already introduced, I'm Dumisani Ngumalo, working with the Presidential Climate Commission Secretariat. And amongst other areas, I'm also responsible for donor coordination, which I think is probably of interest to this session. But the donor coordination is mainly for the Commission, not necessarily or broadly for the country. And also on adaptation, I support a lot in terms of realizing the financing agenda of adaptation. Maybe I leave it at that because the climate finance is self-explanatory and it's quite broad in terms of areas that we focus on. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much for that. Let's hear from Ms. Cecilia Njenga. Ms. Njenga, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for taking the time. You're joining us from Germany, I believe. So tell us a little bit about you and just your interest and the work that you do in this field. Good morning. Ms. Njenga, if I can ask you to just pause for a second. We aren't receiving your sound yet. If you can just give me a thumbs up or move on. Should we move on to? Okay, we'll try and fix that sound. Let's hear from.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, we can. There you are. Great. Great. We don't have to move on.
Okay.
Yes. Good morning.
Look, good morning. Thank you very much. And it's indeed a great pleasure for me to be joining you this morning. I'm actually joining you from Dubai, where I'm attending the Middle East and North Africa Climate Week. Great, exciting discussions going on here. I recently left South Africa, where I headed the UNEP office, to join the UNFCCC, where I am now serving as the Director for Intergovernmental Support and Collective Progress. My role at the UNFCCC entails working with the governing bodies. This is the presidency of the COP, as well as the subsidiary bodies responsible for implementation and science, to ensure that the climate change negotiations continue to be supported and continue to be credible and inclusive of all stakeholders, as well as ensuring that the commitments that are made through these negotiations are met, and through the collective progress work, assessing whether we are really keeping pace with our commitments to address this global challenge of climate change. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. And my apologies. Yes, you are in Dubai. For some reason, we thought that you were joining us from Germany. Well, either place, I suppose, is fantastic. Thank you very much. Mr. Arab Hobala, thank you so much for your time. Please tell us where you are joining us from, and just, yes, why this is so important to you.
Good morning. And thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to see that Indalo Inclusive, the baby is growing. And with Seed, which has now 20 years, we're very happy to see how this baby is moving on, and we'll do our best to see how to accompany it. But about me now, I'll come later to that. I retired from UNAP 5 years ago. I have been leading the whole program on sustainable consumption and production, and also working on small and medium enterprises. Why I'm interested in that? Probably simply because I'm very frustrated by the large amount of declaration, policies, agenda, and the very limited amount of delivery. So our big problem, if we want to reach out to the goals on climate change, if you want to use properly the finance that is available, we need to think about delivery. And this requires not just educating the people, but educating the policymakers and the bankers to really think about the future of the planet. I can tell you later more about that on what I'm aiming at. Thank you.
Arab, thank you very much. And can you tell us where you're joining us from?
I'm joining you from Greece, where I'm based now.
Oh, my dream destination. All right. Well, I'm very, very jealous this morning, and thank you for your time. And then let's say hello to Ariane Labat. Ariane, a very good morning to you, and tell us where you are joining us from, and just why, yes, for you too, that this is something that keeps you up at night.
Good morning, colleagues. I'm joining you from China, but I'm in between two other meetings, so apologies for not being in person. So from the EU side, I'm very happy to be again with all the colleagues from Indalo Inclusive and all the supporters, Flanders region, network, etc. The reason why I'm excited to be with you is because I like that Indalo Inclusive is working on just transition entrepreneurship in the mining communities, because you know that's where it's happening for real. That's where you have young people, where you have former coal miners or former coal truck loaders who reinvent themselves, who build a new enterprise in their communities for better water access, for new jobs, and that's where the just transition is vibrant, and that's what we want to grow as EU and partners. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Okay, I believe that some of our guests and our panelists are a bit pushed for time. As you heard Ariane say, she is in between meetings there. So I think we'll get straight to our questions for you. And we'll start with you, Arab. And the first question to you is, what are the global trends and opportunities for micro, small, and medium enterprises to collaborate at a global level in response to the need, the desperate need, I think we need to add, for climate change adaptation? Arab, are you able to hear me? If you can give us a thumbs up if you heard me.
I do hear you. I'm
okay,
just trying to...
There we go. We do have you. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yeah, but I'm going to share a PowerPoint very quickly because I have some important keywords.
Okay.
But I don't know what's going on with the system. I did share it. Did you see my slides?
Okay, something is appearing
Not
there.
yet.
Now, yes, there it is.
Something is going wrong with the system. Trying to, okay. Now that's better. I'm supposed to delete this one here. Okay, now that's fine?
Great.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me, as I said in the beginning, I'm a little bit frustrated after all the long career I have in the UN, while I have seen so much of policies and declaration and not so much of implementation. And we need to really focus more and more about that. And, but we need to understand how we have been proceeding with this issue. Let me give you a brief idea of what is SEED, and this implies a lot also to what Indalo Inclusive is and will become. It's really promoting entrepreneurship, for which we need the right finance in order to be able to make a difference on the ground. So SEED has been doing it, Indalo Inclusive is doing it, but we are doing it on a very limited level. Because we don't have the right policy support and we don't have the right financial support. What is interesting in the approach by both SEED and Indalo is that it has been an evolving program from the starter, replicator, moving to next steps, trying to see how we can reach out to the policies and so on. And you see progressively how learning by doing, SEED has been moving by improving its work, getting from the starter, the catalyzer, the accelerator, and so on, implementing it in a large number of countries, and getting to the level where we say, okay, and now what next? What next once we have achieved all this, reaching out to many enterprises, to different programs, to many countries, looking at the business development strategies, reaching out to all type of people. But it's still, when you look at the challenges we have ahead of us, when you listen to what came out from Glasgow, when you listen to what came out from UNEA recently in Nairobi, you wonder if it is just a drop in the ocean, a polluted ocean, of course, for which we need really to find a solution. Now, we have been working on the supporting the enterprises in the beginning, most of us, but we need to work much more on the ecosystem, and the ecosystem are the policies and the finance that will make sure that those enterprises find the right policy support and find the right access to the banks, which most of them are not ready to finance small and medium enterprises. So money is there. We should just keep this in mind properly. Money is there. It's simply not being used properly. And banks do not know how to work with small and medium enterprises, and small and medium enterprises don't know how to go to the bank and to access them. So it's the work to be done both ways. And once it is done at the small level, it needs to be scaled up. And this scaling up is really missing. Would it be in South Africa alone, or would it be in other countries at the global level? And that's what we're trying to do. But now in terms of challenge, when you look after 20 years of experience of SEED and looking at what other initiative has been reaching out, we see very well that the entrepreneurs, the enterprises, they do have a very good business model reaching out to social and environmental matters. I insist on that. There is really a very good business model, but remains at their level, at their scale. In order to have an impact, we need to move further. We have been looking so much about recovery, green recovery, putting a lot of money in big companies. The money did not reach where it should have gone to the small and medium enterprises who are locally deeply rooted, who can build the local resilience at local level, and if you expand it at national level. So before talking even about financial support, there is a non-financial support that is essential for them, to accompany them, to see how to make them more resilient, to improve their literacy about business and financial issues, and then go to the financial sector. People need to get prepared, and it's an important challenge for the entrepreneur and for the bank to get the right language and the right connection for that. We need to make the finance accessible to the small and medium enterprises. And I repeat, the money is there. It's simply badly allocated. And sometimes government and banks prefer to allocate a large amount of money to one or two entities rather than disseminating this money to millions of entities. And that's where we have a big problem in order to get to that. That will bring us to really the policy perspective, where I said we need to educate the policy makers. I have been discussing with many ministers, different type of ministers, industry, environment, and so on. They all wish to work with small and medium enterprises, but they don't know how to work with them. Simply, there is a big misconception. The first reaction is, but there are too many. We don't know how to work with them. Yes, fine. People are also too many. We have 7 billion, 8 billion, but we need to reach out to these people. So we need to change our paradigm in working with them and make sure that we connect the policymakers with small and medium enterprises on a practical way, operational way, not just to have a policy. As I said, I have been working for more than 25 years on sustainable consumption and production. We have pushed it to the highest level. Now, every other speech from the Secretary General, he will tell you our unsustainable consumption and production patterns. We have many policies. Still, we are not implementing them because policymakers don't know how to get down to that. We have to make sure how to handle that. And then, of course, educate people through multi-stakeholder partnership in order to see how to access finance. I'll come later on to this when it comes to the next question as an opportunity.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Hobala. I'm definitely touching a nerve there. So you definitely got to the nitty-gritty of it. Ariane Labat, let's get to you next. And how is the European Commission, that's Team Europe, responding to climate change and the just transition agenda and its impacts in relation to South Africa in particular and its partnership with civil society and government?
Thank you very much. So together with Team Europe colleagues, so what we mean by Team Europe colleagues, it's the different embassy from our member states present in South Africa. It's together with our development finance institution and together with our European private sector, who is very vibrant. There's over 1,000 European companies actually investing in South Africa. So together, what we do is we align to South Africa priorities for just transition. And that's a very fundamental starting point. Secondly, we bring in the diversity of our support schemes, our investment background, our technologies, our expertise, and we really try to make it work together because each of our regions in Europe have different strengths in technology term, in business strength, and that are of different interest for South Africa. So if I give you an example, we have some member states who are extremely strong at finding solutions to adapt to a climate world that is more dry, because they have expertise with water solutions. So they're bringing that angle. We have other member states, we have 30 regions in Europe that are currently phasing out their coal, their peat, their oil and gas operation. And they have their youth, their trade unions, who are at the forefront of reinventing new industrial background with green battery schemes, for instance, on green steel. And so we bring in these people from Europe who are in the midst of the just transition, and we exchange and we build together some projects with South African counterparts. Yes, and thirdly, we also learn from South African experiences, because really we are in a race against time to reduce our emissions, to become more resilient to the climate impact that are happening. And we have to do it as well in Europe, around the world with our international partners. So it's very important for us to learn from South Africa. And to give you one example we're learning from, South African National Treasury has set up what is called the Green Outcome Fund. It's a very powerful fund. It's mixing 10% funding from the South African budget with 90% investments from private investors. And it's funding SMEs who are active in climate action, in resilience action, etc. And this SME receive the support, the financial support, but also the financial skills that they need to grow. And these schemes has been extremely powerful to help SMEs go over the COVID period, the pandemic, as well as to grow and create jobs. So you see that type of instrument that is in place, we are very happy to learn from it, to grow from it, and be at scale. I thank you.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Ariane. Thank you very much there. Dumisani, I haven't forgotten about you. What are the main objectives and components of the draft, and that's the draft, Just Transition Framework for South Africa?
Yeah, no, thanks. So, as you know, in 2018, the social partners here in South Africa came together under the umbrella of the Presidential Job Summit. And collectively, they agreed that there was a need, of course, to come up with a body such as this, called the Presidential Climate Commission. And at that time, of course, the view was that it should be a climate commission. However, for it to be effective, for the silo mentality to be sort of dismantled, it needed to sit within a centrally coordinated position, which was then the president. And the Presidential Commission has since been established, and since its establishment, we've already participated, or at least supported the process to communicate South Africa's NDC, and we've made our recommendations very clearly to say, understanding the impacts of climate change and the agency that we have around the transition, we think that a fairly more ambitious, NDC target is relevant to put South Africa at a position or at an advanced position where it can, access the relevant opportunities that are available as part of the transition, but also put it on the map in terms of being a leader around addressing climate change issues. And it was also in that context that we flagged quite strongly the importance of the adaptation sector. Of course, thanks to the South African government for leading around the adaptation communication on that. But what we've done since then was to obviously engage with sectors, or at least key topics that are relevant for the just transition. And part of those were around the water security question. We looked at employment and livelihoods. In our limited understanding, and of course at that time limited, of course, also contribution through the climate finance lens, or financing of the just transition lens, we tried to look at the SMME role in the transition process, and that was in our dialogues, which have built up to what we now have as the draft climate change, the draft just transition framework. And what the framework is really here to assist us with is firstly the governance question. How do we collectively coordinate our initiatives, both in our individual sectors, but also in our respective roles within those sectors? Part of what the Just Transition Framework aims to do is to begin, a journey towards responding to the issue of decent work. Decent work for all, not necessarily, a select few as the status quo has always been. We also want to begin to tackle the issue of social inclusion, and social inclusion as it relates to also the economic growth. We also want to begin looking at eradicating poverty, meaningfully so through, of course, social inclusion, as I've already mentioned. But we look at this as an opportunity for us that we need to seize as a country, in particular for the entrepreneurs. I think this is a chance for them to shine, and we look forward to engaging with the entrepreneurs on the question of just transition.
Fantastic, and I do want to know more about that, but I will get back to you with just a follow-up question. Cecilia Njenga, let's get the next one to you. The UNFCCC is the global convener of the Conference of Parties. Now, from the recent 26th COP held in Glasgow, that meeting last year, what are the key takeaways and opportunities that you think entrepreneurs should be responding to from whatever came out of there of importance?
Thank you very much. And again, it's really exciting for me to be here and to be joining the Indalo Inclusive Symposium for, I guess, I don't even remember which number, but thanks for bringing me in. For me, just moving into this international landscape has been a little shocking, if I may say so. And I think it really much relates to what Arab has just said a few minutes ago, where I realized that the climate change negotiations are really led by politics and economics, and social and environmental dimensions seldomly play a major role in determining positions of various parties or governments and states in this process. And therefore, it means we have a lot of work to do if we are going to bring in the social dimension, the social enterprises as being critical, and even talking about nature-based solutions, small businesses where there is big business really determining the outcome of these negotiations. But nevertheless, I would say that there were major breakthroughs in COP26. We saw very fundamental completion of work that will give space and leverage to small businesses. And I'd like to mention here two key elements that were outstanding from the Paris Agreement. The first one is what we call Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, and this relates to carbon markets and non-market-based approaches, which were finalized, and this led to the full implementation of the Paris Agreement, and these will ensure a level playing field for everyone, and this is both in developing countries and also in developed countries. And I think what Ariana has shared here with us with regards to the possibilities that exist for exchange of businesses, the symbiotic nature of businesses across the value chain or the supply chain, but also allowing for exchange across north-south, south-south collaboration is going to be extremely crucial in terms of tapping into this new market, carbon markets and non-market-based mechanisms. The second area is about allowing for increased collaboration. We are talking about inclusion here, and mobilizing new additional financing and also engaging in a much more deliberate manner the private sector as key players in order for them to benefit from the rules that will be set up and will be the same for everybody. But I think more crucially, as Dumisani has said, if these actions and outcomes of COP are not transformed into national programs, where we have an opportunity to increase accountability and continue building trust even at the national level as we collectively build at the global level, I think we will not be able to achieve much. And therefore the need for us to work even as people that are engaged in the social entrepreneurship sector to keep raising our voices and having a chance to ensure that we benefit equally from national development programs and plans, whether it's through the small industry, whether it's through the tourism department, the environment department, cities, etc. I'd just like to highlight very quickly a major outcome, which is very relevant to this meeting from Glasgow. We have seen that adaptation has now been recognized as priority. It was, of course, always there, but there is now a major recognition of climate change adaptation, and a new work program has been launched to start working on a new global goal on adaptation. And in this way, we will help and place a central emphasis in addressing the climate impacts across the world from an adaptation point of view. In order for us to do that, we have been urged to at least double the collective provision of climate finance for adaptation in developing countries. And therefore, I hope, our supporters and our funders that have continued to support Indalo Inclusive and others working in the climate change adaptation sector in South Africa, the Flanders, the European Union, and others, including Nedbank and other private sector, to really heed on this call and to see how we can continue providing this support to this important sector. But also mentioning that on mitigation, we also realized, and I was happy to see a strengthening of a collective agreement by governments to explore ways to close the current emissions gap. And in the first time, we saw a mention of the phase down of coal and the phase out of fossil fuel subsidies been mentioned in the final declaration, the Glasgow Pact, in this. But what does this mean? And I think it falls in the heart of what Roberto mentioned earlier. The EU support to South Africa on the Just Transition Program will be one way. I spent a lot of time when I was in South Africa, really discussing and talking about the just transition, particularly in the communities that would be transitioning away from a coal-based economy to a much more broadened economy, etc., and what this would mean in terms of jobs, in terms of air pollution reduction, etc., etc. And I think this will be very crucial, even as the developed countries, particularly the higher emitters, the G7 higher emitters, work towards increasing their ambition. There is a significant role to play in South Africa in terms of contributing to the ambition of moving towards a 1.5 degree in climate. On finance, again, one of the areas that was a little bit disappointing was that at COP26, there was no real significant show of whether we had really achieved the 100 billion goal that had been committed to in Paris. And therefore, what has been recommended and what will be happening now is that a new work program to set a new collective quantified goal on climate finance has actually embarked. And we are hoping that this new collective quantified goal will be important in terms of ensuring that the commitments in terms of climate finance and financial flows are really demonstrated.
All right.
But I think, as Arab mentioned, we need to move to implementation and action. And I think the work that Indalo Inclusive does is a real show of this. But in order for us to move to this new phase and as we go to COP27, Egypt has indicated very fundamentally that they would like COP27 to be an African COP and to be the COP that really shows implementation and action is really happening. And therefore, again, how best can we do this apart from bringing the key players that are bringing transformation, whether it's in water, whether it's in green energy, whether it's in sustainable agriculture at the forefront to showcase some of these examples.
Absolutely.
The bottom line is we need a whole of society approach. It has to be inclusive. Small businesses have to be on the table in order for us to achieve the huge transformations we require in order to address climate change.
And I'm sure we all agree with that, Cecilia. Absolutely, that is what is needed and that action. And Ariane, I believe you are pressed for time. You're going to have to leave us in the next few minutes. So I'm going to send the next question to you, and just to all our panelists, if we could just shorten our answers to the next question. We are trying to catch up with the clock. So Ariane, just very quickly for you, what are the opportunities for symbiotic trade and partnerships on green services and products between South African entrepreneurs and their EU counterparts, and how could that assist communities adapt to the effects of climate change?
Thank you very much for bringing the question about trade. We are very happy indeed that we have a thriving trade relationship with South Africa. You need to remember South Africa is actually a net exporter to EU to the tune of 2 billion euro, especially in the agri sector, for instance. So we are in demand for South African products. We are also working with integrated value chains. So there are a lot of products that you import from Europe that then help you export further to us and to the rest of the world. So it's this kind of win-win relation that we want to grow. The European consumers are asking more and more green goods and green services. What I mean by that is sustainable textile, for instance, and you have a card to play here, for instance, with the wool that is produced from the mohair that is from the mountains of the Drakensbergs and all around that, for instance. We have a demand for your karoo lamb, for instance. A lot of other products like that are high quality, that are recognized in Europe, like South African rooibos, etc. So that's the agri type of products. We have also a very strong demand for manufactured goods. We are importing new automotives. We are importing a lot of other industrial products, your steel as well. Now there's a very big development of the green steel products. So, there are opportunities all along a number of value chains. We have supported actually very in-depth research to spot
which are the sectors where we could export and import more and create a lot of jobs from that. So I really hope we can continue that fruitful relationship and grow together. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I think we might have to say goodbye to Ariane, or she'll stay with us as long as she can. She is traveling, as you see there. And let's go back to Arab. And Arab, just for you, what could be the practical actions that Africa and South Africa in particular, entrepreneurs from the continent and the country, actually take to attract global climate finance investments? Like we say, we have a lot being done on paper, but we have to walk the talk, right?
Yeah, thank you very much. I will not go back to the PowerPoint, not to lose time, but I have it in front of me from another side for some keywords. I'm not going to tell to South Africa what they have to do, but I want to share with them an example that of an initiative that on which I'm working at the global level, in which South Africa, I'm discussing with the Minister of Environment, will be one of the launching partner together with Indonesia, Germany, and other countries, in order to see, by drawing lessons from what has been done over the 20 years, how we can really scale up. As we have said, the private sector role has been recognized for the last 5-10 years. We always recognize that we need to work with the private sector. We should keep in mind, and I don't think Cecilia will contradict me, this was obvious in Glasgow, it was mainly the big companies. I don't think there has been SMEs there. And when you talk about the private sector, most of the time, the ones who come up front are the big companies because they are there, they are visible, they can communicate and so on. And they are, let us be frank, very good on greenwashing. So how much are we going down to the small and medium enterprises, which have demonstrated that they can be very innovative? So first of all, innovation is not just something for big companies and wealthy companies. Innovation, and the best innovation, is the one done by local people who are confronted with the problems on the ground and who have an issue of survival for their community and for their business. They come with fantastic innovation, but we don't talk about them, we don't promote them, we don't give them the elements to scale up. And this happens a lot also in South Africa, and I know that Indalo Inclusive is working with some of them. The challenges on environment and social elements can make sense through business. We can work with them on viable business by creating jobs and having business, a good product there. And there comes the issue not only just of adaptation, but of mitigation. I know that priority of the countries is most of the time now adaptation, adaptation, adaptation. Let us not forget about mitigation, which is essential because it means better manage the resources that we have today before going to adaptation. So it's an extremely important thing on which we have to keep in mind. Now, there are some elements where we need to see how to partner better. Silos, and we keep on working in silo. Even in the UN, we work in silo. I'm an ex-UNEP, I tell you for how many times. We keep on working in silo within the UN. It's the same as the different ministries in any government work in silo. So let us not hide this reality. We need to see how to bring those closer to each other, find a win-win approach, and that's the type of initiative on which I'm working, and I hope Indalo or in South Africa can replicate it at national level. I'll be working with them. We need to communicate first much better, and I used to use 3 words usually myself: sticks, carrots, and tambourine. And I know many people like them because it sticks to them. Stick is the legislation, the policy framework, the force agreement that we have there. The carrots is the market and the incentives. Most of the time we stop there. But 50% of it is proper communication to reach out and enable. communication to reach out and enable. And once you work with limited number of companies, because you cannot work with all of them, you demonstrate properly what they have done. You learn from their process. Don't care so much about the outcome. The process is far more important. Communicate about it. Then you can reach to the larger number of companies. I used to call it value the few best in order to reach to the rest. And that's where we can move there in order to have properly collective action. I insist on a few words on which are element of this coalition. By the way, I call it the Coalition for Innovation, Circularity and Entrepreneurship. I'm actually preparing for it. I will be launching it at Stockholm Plus 50 and then at HLPF. We most of the time, we say we support the small and medium enterprises. The language has to change. We should enable the small and medium enterprises, enable them to go to next step, accompany them, work with them. So support does not cover this enough. Think very much about replication and scaling up. But most important, and this was missing in Glasgow, and it's missing in most of the conferences, we need to give a voice to the small and medium enterprises. We need to let them speak themselves at their conferences, tell what they have to do, how they do it, not speak on their behalf, because their language is much more convincing that what I can do or a policy maker can do on their behalf. And the system-wide innovation from the small and medium enterprises is impressive. It just needs to be connected. Building partnership between small and medium enterprises with larger companies in the value chain. Most of the time we look at the value chain, we expect that it will trickle down, top down from the big companies to the small and medium enterprises. This is theory. It does not happen. Very hardly it happens. You need to enable directly the small and medium enterprises and making sure that we have the good knowledge sharing in order to be able then to leverage the finance we need. So you see, finance for me comes at the end, not because it's not important, it's the most important, but you need to prepare the ground properly in order to be able to get the finance with enabled SMEs and well-educated bankers and policymakers. Thank you.
Oh, Arab, thank you very much for that. And I think you can hear, you have a lot of fans in the room here today for everything that you are saying. Dumisani, just going back to it and also just relating to what Arab has had to say about, making sure entrepreneurs, and I think the word is access to all of these things. Everyone can have wonderful ideas, but they need the vehicle, they need the tool, they need the door to open somewhere for those ideas to come through. And going back to what you were talking about, which was the draft Just Transition Framework for South Africa, how do you think, what would be the best way for entrepreneurs to actually respond to this framework? How do they use it? How do they get through the bureaucracy and the red tape to make sure that the seed that has been planted in their heads and on paper is something that can actually help the people around them?
Yeah, no, thank you. So the framework as it stands now, it's a draft. So the first opportunity that entrepreneurs have is to contribute to that draft, to say, how do we see South Africa transition, at least from an SMME point of view, from an entrepreneur's point of view, from an individual or community point of view, how do we want to see the just transition unfolding in South Africa? Part of the principles that are embedded in the framework are the distributive justice principle, which really speaks to equal distribution of resources. You can look at land, you can think about the capital allocation that we were speaking about earlier on. It's also about redistributive justice, redressing of the historical imbalances, as I've earlier on also indicated. And what is even more important, or at least one of the key principles that I relate with strongly, is around procedural justice. And there we are simply saying, let's empower workers, let's empower communities, let's empower businesses in their small scale. And we are also wanting to hear from the businesses. How do they want to be empowered? What's the red tape that they are constantly, coming across as part of their business challenges? And how can the framework then respond to that? So the framework document is out on our website, the www.climatecommission.org.za, for public commenting until the end of April. But key to that framework is the planning for the future that we are encouraging as part of that framework, and part of the planning instruments or planning elements that we want to consider and we are actually considering as part of that framework is economic diversification instruments, and that talks to a lot to the SMME inclusion. It talks a lot about social inclusion. So entrepreneurs there have an opportunity to contribute or even say what sort of initiatives they want to see unfolding on the ground, what sort of government interventions do they want to see as part of the just transition. And what we are saying really for us as a commission is that we want to elevate issues of localization. I think you've heard it in the recent investment conference, and I think there was another session also around investment that was held here in the country. And that spoke a lot about localization. As we embrace and admit, or at least acknowledge that part of the just energy transition requires that we change the way we generate electricity, and that is of course through the renewable energy systems. What are some of the manufacturing opportunities that entrepreneurs can seize from that transition? What are some of the export opportunities that entrepreneurs can also seize from that transition? Because as an entrepreneur, I think you should not only look at your boundaries as only limiting you to South Africa, but you should also explore the global market to see what opportunities you can also leverage from that. We've, as part of our work under the climate finance portfolio of the Commission, we've engaged a group of DFIs, South African DFIs, and asked them to at least convene themselves through their CEO levels. And we've convened what we call the CEOs Forum from these DFIs, which are inclusive of the Development Bank of Southern Africa, the DBSA, the ITC, as well as NEF and Land Bank. Okay. And key to what we are talking about there is also the issue of access to capital. And what we are saying there is what are some of the levers that we can put in place to enhance access of finance by small-scale medium enterprises. I was just noting now on my notes that actually there are a couple of programs also that the NEF as well as the ITC are running to encourage participation or economic participation by small-scale medium enterprises. And the framework is really encouraging of such initiatives. And also, just in conclusion, I was looking at the issue of skills. I think part of what we probably need to look at, or what entrepreneurs need to look at, is the issue of the skills of the future. What are the skills that the transition will lead us or will require in the near future? And that's probably something that they could be working towards as entrepreneurs in their smaller spaces, and see how best they can make use of those opportunities. And that also does not only talk to skills, but it also talks to business opportunities in terms of the minerals of the future that we're looking at. When we talk to the EV market, for instance, the electronic vehicle market, we're looking at battery storage opportunities, we're looking at manufacturing of certain panels or components of those vehicles, and what are the opportunities then that entrepreneurs are associating with as far as that market is concerned. So it's a number of broad, I would say, outline of opportunities that we can look at with time allowing. But from the Commission side, I think we are providing the enabling platform, the enabling environment, the enabling legislation. We will, of course, informed by science, provide the relevant recommendations to say which pathway should the country be taking. Of course, informed by views from all our social partners who are represented in the Commission, inclusive of labor, inclusive of communities through community organizations, as well as other NGOs, inclusive of business, who, as we are saying, that we need to strongly partner with the private sector. So private sector is represented in the Commission, and they will have a voice in terms of how we transition towards low carbon economy and climate resilient society.
Oh, great, I'm sure that comes
Thank
as a relief to many people who are listening and watching. So, Cecilia, I do apologize, but I did have a quick follow-up question for you, but I actually think that you did touch on it already when we spoke about COP27 and what needs to go there and why that is so important for Africa. I just want to get to one question that has come through from Patrick Gurney, and Dumisani, I think this is something that you could answer, and if we could do it very quickly, because we are way ahead of, way over time, regarding the $8.5 billion from the JETP announced in November 2021. It is almost April 22, and there is no clarity about the nature, location, cost, and management of these funds. One thing is for sure, no one really knows where they are exactly, what they can be used for, and when substantive negotiations will commence. What is the plan for these funds? And I think that is a question for many people. Thank you for that one, Patrick. I think a very pertinent question is, what happens to the money? So if you have an answer for Patrick Gurney there.
Yeah, no, that's a tricky one to answer.
We didn't put you in the hot seat for nothing.
No, it's, the temperature has increased from this question, certainly. But suffice to say that a few processes have unfolded ever since that political declaration. So it's not that the money was really transferred to South African account, but there was that political declaration from the IPG group of countries to say that they, over a 5-year period, they intend to at least commit 8.5 billion, which they want to see supporting South Africa's just energy transition program. And after that, the president has, through the processes, managed to set up an interministerial task team, which is led by the Minister of Environment, and within that task team, or at least that task team is supported by our recently appointed climate envoy, Mr. Daniel Minele, who then heads up the climate finance task team that is meant to basically deal or structure and deal with the management day-to-day ins and out of that deal. So as far as the Climate Commission is concerned, we can simply support that process. However, details of how the funding will flow, where it will flow to, will obviously be made available as that task team progresses with their work. Thank you.
Okay, well, Patrick, I hope that does answer your question. And I think we now need to move on and let you get on with getting to your discussions and getting together in your groups, and time for your parallel sessions to begin. And I think session 1 is climate finance. So we will let you get to those discussions and get to those talks. And thank you very much for your attention. I think you all need to stretch your legs a little bit as well. So let's do that. And of course, after that, we will continue with those sessions. Thank you. So do you want me to do the other one as well? Okay. Where are do we know which rooms they are? And where's the other one? Okay, just if I can have your attention, please. Yes, your parallel sessions, session 1, climate finance, and session 2, youth innovations. I think if you can just check in with Vivian. Vivian, if you can show everyone who you are so that she can direct you to the relevant rooms. I don't want to send you to the wrong place. There are a couple of functions happening here. You might end up in the wrong discussion altogether. So here she comes. And depending on which session you are involved in, that is Vivian, she will direct you. Thank you. I don't want to take a chance, I'm not sure. Good morning everyone.
we're going to take a tea break now. Tea break is just outside when you go. We're just going to stretch for at least 10 minutes to 15 minutes. Drink the tea. You can also take it to your room. Those who are in the climate finance session are going to be in this room where we are right now. And those who are in the youth inclusion, there will be people outside showing you where it is because it's around the corner on the other side of this big room. So we'll just make sure that there are people to show you where it is. Thank you so much. Enjoy tea, and we'll see you in the next session.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Yes, sir, how are you? Good. No, I'm going to wait. Yeah. Is it distracting? Okay. No. Very good. So the ladies okay. Yeah, Papa. Can I help you? You can like 50 some.